Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Whitney Ann Adams. Whitney, how you doing today?
I'm so great. It's nice to be here.
It is an honor to have you here. For those of you that don't know Whitney, before we talk about why you are here, Whitney, I would like for those to get to know you a little bit first. Whitney is a costume designer who has worked on internationally acclaimed films that have been featured in so many different festivals, from Sundance to Tribeca to the Toronto International Film Festival. Now you are also what, before we go any further, what got you into costume design? What gave you the push to go, you know what, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life?
It's funny. I started college pre-med and I quickly changed my major to theater in 3 weeks. Everything felt wrong being in pre-med, plus calculus totally killed me. But I was the person in high school who got a job so I could buy movies. And so I think I owned like 500 movies by the time I graduated high school. Like I bought a TV to put in my room and I was just watching movies all the time. And the thing
Yeah.
that really did it for me was my favorite movie, which is Moulin Rouge. And then also my other favorite movie, my favorite horror movie, which is Scream. I would just watch both of those like all the time. And so then I fell into the theater world in college, and then I moved to New York, and then I fell into the film world after that. And it just all clicked. I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? It's the perfect blend of all my favorite things.
Well, now and for those of you watching, I need someone to make this happen for me. I need a Scream edition of Moulin Rouge. I need
Yeah.
to see Ghostface doing a voulez-vous coucher avec moi. I need that in my life right now. But on top of that, you are a member of both United Scenic Artists Local 829 and the Costume Designers Guild Local 892. Nice little flip there. My
I know,
dyslexia,
right?
at first I thought I messed up, but this is where it gets really interesting. Now, as a costume designer, you don't get a lot of the credit that you deserve. There's a lot of the actors, the score, the directors, but you look at like 3 months, the MTV, and then Freaky. Freaky Friday the 13th, our movie Freaky, Vince Vaughn, Catherine Newton absolutely killed it. In many's opinion, the best paranormal activity and paranormal activity next of kin, as well as the upcoming We Have a Ghost, which is out now on Netflix by the time you guys are watching this. So make sure you are checking out We Have a Ghost on Netflix, and the independent film story Av, which will be having its world premiere at South by Southwest in March. So obviously, as a horror fan, I got to talk to you about Freaky and Next of Kin. Now, I think Freaky really came out of nowhere to a lot of people. We get this idea of Vince Vaughn, Catherine Newton in this slasher film, The Blissfield Butcher, which is funny because Blissfield is a town about 20 minutes that way from
Oh,
me. So
amazing.
that made it even funnier. But this movie honestly is one of the funniest horror movies I've seen in a long time that gave me real belly laughs. I can't tell you how hard I laughed at the scene of Vince Vaughn trying to pretend he's a teenage girl in the backseat of the car with that boy. Like the awkwardness I felt. And the costume design in that movie, you obviously, that's a huge part of the movie, not just for
Mhm.
Vince Vaughn's Butcher, but for a lot of the kids. You got to make it look realistic. You can't make it look over the top and stuff like that. So what gives you your drive and your motivation to make this, like I said with that movie, you got to have that influence so that way when kids, because obviously it's more of a teenage slasher film, and I'm not saying that in
Yeah.
an insulting way. Like, that is not at all an insulting way, but it is a hip slasher movie. And I know I
Yeah.
sound like a super boomer when I say that, but what gave you the influence for a lot of the costume design throughout Freaky?
Well, I wanted to make sure it was grounded, especially because it's the movie that has the elements of fantastical. I mean, it's
Mhm.
supernatural. You have this body swap thing happening. So it was extra important to make sure every character was really grounded in reality. So it was doing a lot of looking at kids' Instagrams, like I'm not a young thing anymore. So I had to like tap into the younger generation and seeing what people are wearing. And so you go on Instagram, you go on blogs, you go on TikTok, you go every different place to sort of see what the current trends are, but then also having classic influences. I mean, the butcher in Millie's body, so much of that costume is influenced by Grease and by Rebel Without a Cause. Like those are two of my pulls. So you really get inspiration from everywhere, but also you meet these characters quickly. You need to know who they are pretty quickly. So you really want to capture exactly who they are in a glance. And so that was really finding exactly who everyone was, because we don't get a ton of backstory. We don't have time. We have a story to tell. So you really
Sure.
add to what the actors are doing, and you create this character together. So that's the fun part about it.
I can totally see the Travolta Dean influence now that you say that. And I love the fact that you're willing to wear your influences on your sleeve, no pun intended. Now let's flip that on its head. Now, Paranormal Activity Next of Kin is quite the opposite of that. Now, was it more of a challenge for you to do a costume design for Paranormal Activity, or was it more of a challenge to do something like Freaky, which is more of a hip, popular type thing?
I think they're both challenging in their own ways. I mean, contemporary clothes are super challenging because you have everyone feels a lot more like they're an expert on contemporary clothing. So you
Sure.
have a lot more people who don't really know, say, if it's set in the 60s, like the period of it all, like what did people actually wear? They sort of go along with you a lot more easily, whereas contemporary, everyone has more of an opinion. So it's really hard to get it exactly right. And then you have something like Next of Kin, which is technically a contemporary movie, but almost every costume is period to a certain extent because
Sure.
it all takes place on this Amish farm. And so we made everything from scratch. All of that was custom made, especially because you can't just go buy Amish clothes somewhere. They make all their clothes, so you have to create it from scratch. So that was hugely challenging in just a resources, material, time, labor kind of way.
Right.
And not to mention all of the distressing and aging that had to happen. So they were both extremely challenging in very, very different ways.
And that was going to be my next question, because like you said, like when you're doing something like with Freaky, you are going to get a lot more people that are opinionated about this and that. When you're working with more of next of kin, like you said, you're in an Amish community, even though in the movie they
Right.
do use TikTok in the Amish community.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of the Amish around me watched it and went, "That's not accurate. I don't wear those type of suspenders." So which
Right.
is not a jam. Every Amish person that comes into my store wears suspenders, so that's why I had to say that. But in that, do you get more of a? Do you feel like you have more of a freedom when you're doing something like that, where it's like you kind of get to design your own costumes and make your own costumes? Because, like you said, you can't go to Amish R Us and get those shirts. So,
Right.
do you feel like it's more of a challenge, or do you feel more of a freedom and more of a creativity when you get to do it all on your own?
It's a mixture of both. It's a challenge, but also it's a lot more exciting because you do get to make every single choice yourself, but then it's a lot more labor intensive. And, a spoiler alert, but for Next of Kin, like they're not actually Amish. And so
Right.
trying to walk that line of they're impersonating the Amish. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be perfectly Amish or completely accurate. So I could take my own liberties with the design. So that was really fun to sneak in some sort of Easter eggs that they're not actually Amish. And like that's where the TikTok comes in. It's like they do everything for appearances, but once they're together, they have a little bit more freedom when they don't have outsiders there. So that was a really fun tightrope to walk.
Right. And it's amazing to be able to watch you to be able to make these own. And it's funny because when you, and I'm not, please don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Before I started doing this, I didn't go as deep into like costume design and lighting and things, as I've been able to talk to a lot of people that work in doing those things. And it's made me gain this huge respect and this huge admiration for all the hard work that you guys do. And like I said, a lot of our favorite movies wouldn't be the same without the costume design. If I didn't see Marty McFly with his self Velcroing
Right.
shoes and jacket that dries itself, like a lot of things would be a lot different without the costume design. So you are literally, and I don't mean this in any type of disrespect, the punter and field goal kicker of the movie. Because look, nobody talks about you, but when they need you, and you need to be there.
Or when it's
So
really bad, then you get talked about, but not in a good way. And
right.
so, you want the characters to feel real and the world to feel real. And it's really tough in contemporary where if your work blends in perfectly as it should, you do disappear from the conversation. So, I've been very much a part of my unions and fighting for more just creative respect for what we do. And, if someone loves something, find out who designed it, find out who made it, who made that happen, made that choice. So that's something that I really believe in, highlighting my, fellow designers' work as much as possible.
And I'm gonna pull this. Let's look at Pearl right now.
Mhm.
All of you, when you have all your cosplayers that are out doing this. Yes, respect and love for the actress, respect and love for Mia Goth in this specific situation, because obviously she's just fucking amazing. But without that costume design, it wouldn't be the same character. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people that are out there doing this, they don't understand that. They want to model themselves. And again, no disrespect to anybody, but we need to be more respectful and more acknowledging of who designed these costumes, not just the actor or actresses that are wearing the costume. So cosplayers, remember, when you're trying to look like your favorite horror villain, horror hero, remember those people that created those costumes. Look them up. Let
Yeah,
them know that
they
you
worked.
really appreciate the work that they did.
They worked really hard, and the designer of both X and Pearl, Malgosia Turzanska, is part of my union, and her work is amazing, and like she should be highlighted for her amazing work on both of those films. And so, most of us are on social media or have our website, so it's like really easy to look up on IMDb and find us, because we appreciate all the love, and it's really fun to see people really, loving what we do.
Right. And like I said, that's how I found you, was reaching out. And I'm a big fan of what you've done, and it's amazing to be able to talk about how horror started for you. Because like I said, Paranormal Activity Next of Kin is my favorite in that franchise. And that's not
Yay.
lip service. I've said it numerous times. Find old tweets, guys. You do it on other people all the time. Find my old tweets and you'll see it's real. And I'm a huge fan of Freaky. In our intro for every live video that we do, my wife and I, when we do our top tens or anything, we have in there the kill of the champagne bottle going down the throat.
Yes.
We have that in our intro. That's how much we truly enjoyed Freaky. I think it was one of those movies that I watched it and I got that same feeling you were talking about Scream. I got that same feeling again when I was watching Freaky as I got when I watched Scream for the first time. I'm watching this movie that I feel is very cool, very hip, very relatable, and it's easy for non-horror fans to come and enjoy this movie and maybe be a gateway into other horror films. And that's what I felt Scream did back in '96. And I love that what Freaky did, because it had a lot of people talking. You had a very good cast. You had a very good costume design. You had very good directors. Everything about the movie just hit for me. And I was a huge, huge fan. So now we talked about finding these people on IMDb. But the good thing is you don't got to go there for Whitney, because all her links are down in the description below. So make sure that you're clicking the links. Make sure you're following her on social media so you can stay up to date. Because like I said, you've got these things she's done in the past. That's the tip of the iceberg. We're about to be lowering that water level and going down the iceberg a little bit and see what she's working on in the future. So make sure you can stay up to date on all that so you can have word from the horse's mouth on all the amazing things that she's going to be working on here in the future. So we do know that in the future you are working on We Have a Ghost, which is available now, guys. So make sure you're checking that out on Netflix, as well as, is it Avenue?
Astoria Avenue.
Astoria Avenue. Okay. And that will be South by Southwest. So you guys will be able to check that out in March. So now I want to go back to the past, though, Whitney. And in order for you to be a costume designer in horror films, horror has to start for you somewhere. So I want to know the first horror movie that you watched. And Whitney, we're going to need a bigger episode because your first horror movie was
Jaws.
One of my all-time favorites, and something that Whitney and I were talking about before the episode started. 150,000 billion% a horror film. So do you remember about how old you were, Whitney, the first time you had seen Jaws?
I think I was like 7. I was pretty young. I just remember being so fascinated by like the opening scene and the shark and everything. So I think I was pretty young when I watched it, probably too young to have watched it the first time, but I would definitely say that was by far my first horror movie. And it is to this day one of my favorite films.
Well, and you have that opening of, her out in the water and the getting jerked around, like, especially at a very young age, when you watch this for the first time, that's extremely scary.
So scary. So scary.
And I remember, like, I was potty training when this movie came out. I remember this perfect. I wouldn't go on the potty anymore. I was like, nope, sharks, done. Diaper, now, let's go.
I was scared of my pool sweeper. I think until now, I think I'm still scared of my pool sweep in my parents' pool. I wouldn't go to the deep end. After I saw Jaws, that was it for me. I never went to the deep end. I hated that pool sweeper. There was always a shark in my pool, in my brain.
Well, what I love about Jaws is it's still so relevant today. Like the themes behind the movie and how impactful the movie is, and those shorts, costume design there. You gotta love them short, man.
Oh, they're so good.
It's funny, whenever I go to the beach wearing them, I get kicked out, but Brody does it and everything's fine.
It's fine. It's no big deal.
Do you remember who you were with the first time you had watched it?
I think my twin brother. I think I was with my twin brother Trevor, and we've shared a love of movies my whole life. Like we both love horror movies, and I actually made him watch *Malignant* when I was home for Christmas this
Ooh,
year. He hadn't seen it yet, and we've his favorite horror movie is Alien, and Alien, an action movie Alien. So we just grew up watching every movie together. So I believe we were together watching Jaws. And there were some moments that I think that totally went over our heads. Like I didn't get the USS Indianapolis.
that story.
I was just like, it's so boring in this part. And now as an adult, I so love it's one of my favorite parts of the entire film. But when I was, a 7-year-old, you're just like, oh, boring talking. Give me the
Stop
shark.
talking. But you're right. And the fact that they were all drunk while filming that scene makes it so
Yeah,
much better.
so much better.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, and you're right though, but it is amazing. Like, and that's something that I'd love to talk about on this podcast is like watching these movies as children and then going back and revisiting them as adults can give you two completely different feelings. Like you talk about that scene right there. For me, a big one that I talk about that is like The Exorcist.
Mhm.
Watching The Exorcist as a kid, it scared me because it was scary as hell. But at the same time, as a kid, I was like, yeah, fuck that girl. She's dead. Burn the house down, leave. Now,
Yes.
as a father of two young girls, I feel a fear for a completely different reason. My little girl is laying here and I can't help her. So, Jaws is the same way. You watch this as a kid and like you see Alex Kittner out there getting
Hmm.
killed in the water, and that's
Yeah.
a peer getting killed. But now as a parent, you're watching this scene and that's somebody's little boy that's out there getting killed. So these movies can definitely have a huge effect on you in different areas of your life at different times of your life. And that's the perfect segue into my next question. There are a lot of very effective scenes in Jaws. Do you remember which scene it was that affected young Whitney the most?
I really do think it was that opening scene with the woman, I was like, oh, she's like going skinny dipping. She's so happy she's in the water. And the unknown of just her disappearing and
Yeah,
not knowing what it was and not being able to see through the water, that was the scariest thing. And I love the story of how the Bruce malfunctioned so much that they had to really eliminate a lot of the shots of the shark. But that's what makes Jaws so good, is that there's so much of the unknown for so much of the movie. And so I think that's why the opening scene was by far the scariest for me.
well, there's nothing in this world that is scarier than what happens in our imagination.
Yes.
And you could have. I don't think Jaw. And again, I don't know butterfly effect. We don't know how things could have went. But if Bruce had been a bigger part of the film visually, the film might not have done what it did. Because when you do get those shots of Bruce, it is terrifying. When you
Right.
finally do see the shark, it is scary as hell. So
It's huge.
yes.
So big.
Um, now we talk about what scene affected you the most, Whitney. But what would you say your favorite scene from Jaws is?
Oh gosh, it's really tough. But I think now as an adult, I've watched this movie however many times in my life, but I think as an adult, it really is Quint's monologue about the Indianapolis. Like I know there's not even the shark in that scene, but it's just so powerful and such an incredible moment of acting and storytelling and getting the backstory to this character that you really didn't understand very much about until that scene. And so I think that's really a huge turning point for the movie. Understand his motivations going into the finale and why he destroys the radio and why he wants to destroy the shark on his own. Like
All right.
you really need that, is like such a huge crux foundational moment in the movie. So I think it's my favorite as a storytelling
Sure.
perspective. But any moment with Bruce the shark is my favorite.
I was just gonna say, man, screw that part. That's just
Yeah.
talking. I want to see the shark.
Give me the shark.
So this movie is part of a franchise. I know we don't like to think about that, but it's in my script, Whitney. So I gotta ask you, since it is more than three movies, it is a franchise. Which movie in the Jaws franchise is your favorite?
Well, besides the first one, so it has to be the first one, but I have a huge love of Jaws 3D. It's something that I think, because it takes place at the theme park, it's totally ridiculous. I mean, Dennis Quaid. I think I showed you before this, but I
Yeah,
have the entire trading card set of Jaws 3D trading cards. So I just love that movie. Unironically, I think too, my favorite part of that movie is when the shark just slow motion like
into
bonks
the
the glass with his nose, but it's just like a little love tap and then explosions and water. Like this is completely absurd, but I love it.
And it's funny because, like, again, I'm not a huge fan of Jaws 3D, and I'm nothing, no disrespect towards you. I'm glad if somebody's out there making art. I hope there's someone out there that loves the art
Right.
that's being created. I unironically am a huge fan of Jaws 2. I think Jaws 2 is a very good
Great
film.
movie. Great
Um,
movie.
I don't think anything will ever equal what the first one did to me,
Yeah,
but
same.
Jaws 2 is a fun movie to watch. I have a blast watching Jaws 2, which is kind of, again, a little bit of a segue now. Um, Remakes, requels, sequels, kind of all the rage still.
Mhm.
Would you like to see a remake, reboot, or even a requel of Jaws done today?
I don't think so. I mean, I really don't think so. It's perfect as it is. And also, I think technology, our world is totally different. And there's so many shark movies that are made now, but nothing is going to top Jaws. And I think so much of it has to do with the time and place that it's set in and not having cell phones, not having all of that. And it's just a powerful, so much more of a powerful story. So I think just let it be its own thing. I'm a huge fan of sequels, requels, all of that. Like I cannot wait for the new Scream movie to come out, especially because my friend Avery Plewis designed it. So I can't wait to see her
Yes!
work.
Congratulations!
So I'm just very, I love all sorts of sequels and requels, but I don't think Jaws needs one.
Right. Well, I'm with you. Like, I'm a huge, I think even the worst remake in the history of the world has its merit
Hmm.
because one, someone created art, and I'll always
Hmm.
support that. But two, even if you have a terrible remake, it makes people go back that have never seen the original and watch that original for the first time. Um, I mean, Halloween 2018, even though it's not a remake, it's a requel,
Hmm.
the sales of Halloween 78 went up 33% that year because
Huge,
of people that
which is
wanted to go
amazing.
back. Yeah, people that wanted to go back and rewatch it, or people that, the younger generation that wanted to go watch it for the first time that had never seen it. Those things can make a lot of sense when you look at it that way. So, except for Jaws,
Yeah,
I'm
just
with you.
leave Jaws. Let it be its
Yeah,
thing.
leave Jaws alone. It's just one of those movies. I think you're right. And obviously with the technology we have nowadays, you're going to see a lot more Bruce. You're going to see a lot more CG, and that's just not something we need in this movie. This is a movie that can stand the way it is and stay exactly how it is forever.
Yeah,
And
like when Quint goes into the shark's mouth, he's actually going into the shark's mouth. I do love Deep Blue Sea, but man, when that shark gets Samuel L. Jackson, I'm just like, oh man.
yeah, wah wah.
Womp womp. I mean, I will watch any shark movie, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing like real life Bruce eating
Yeah,
Quint.
yes. And I'm with you. Like, I loved the Meg, and I know I'll get a lot
Yes,
of shit for
it's
saying that.
super fun. It's super fun.
Exactly. I don't go into this looking for, an Oscar winning performance. And I do got to say, real quick, though, bouncing back to the remake of Jaws, I would be down if the shark has the cell phone because that would be cool.
Yeah.
Like the shark's getting ready to attack you, and it's like, dun, dun. Oh,
Yeah.
hold on. That's my ringtone. Hello? Like that. Fish are friends, not food. So Jaws is another one of those movies that has not only stood the test of time, but I just kind of hinted at it. It's been such an influence, and not just for horror fans, but in pop culture in general. People that have never seen this movie know the score. People that are
Mhm.
swimming know the dun, dun.
Yeah.
And it's a very impressive feat for something like that to be reached. Now, when it comes to being impressive, and I think I know the answer because we just touched on it a little bit, but there are a fair amount of nice kills throughout the movie. As fans of horror, obviously, we live vicariously through the kills, and the bloodier the
Mhm.
better. That guy was a douchebag; he deserved it. Not the case in this movie. Which kill would you say it was that stuck with you or affected you the most from Jaws?
For me, it's for that first kill. Even though it's, bloodless, you don't really see it happen. I mean, you see her body later.
Right.
But I think that kill is just so ominous and terrifying because it's so dark and you can't see. And you picture yourself, again, like we talked about imagination, you picture yourself
Mhm.
so much more in that scenario. When you're just having a nice little dip and then suddenly something gets you. And so
Right.
I think for me that's my favorite one. But going back to the score, I actually have a poster, an alternative movie poster of Jaws in my living room that is, the shark eating the score. And so it's
Oh,
got
that's
all the
so
notes and
sick.
and Jaws is eating it. It's a great Etsy seller in London. And I got my twin brother the same one, so we have matching Jaws posters in our houses.
That's so cool.
So, he was a music major. We geeked out about film soundtracks growing up. And so I have such a huge appreciation for score because of my twin brother. And, John Williams is our favorite, and his work is, incredible. I think half of my film score and movie posters in my living room are John Williams. So
That's so
it's just
cool.
so iconic.
Yeah, and I mean, there are movies out there, and obviously other movies too, like Star Wars and stuff like that. But in the horror world, the top three that come to my mind when it comes to the score, where people know the scores even if they've never seen the films, are Halloween,
Hmm.
Jaws, and
Hmm.
Psycho.
Yeah,
People know those
100%.
scores, and um, I love that. I love that, especially in the horror world. The more that you get into it, and the more that you start to have a love and a respect and appreciation, you start to learn about these people that do these amazing things. Obviously, like I said, I'll never poo-poo about actors, directors. They have a hard job too, and what they're
Yes.
doing, obviously, they're in the forefront. They're the quarterback. When they get sacked, we don't look at the line; we look at them. I get it. When something goes bad, it's on them, but it's still a team. And without the
Mhm.
whole team, you can't just throw a quarterback out there and expect him to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't work like that. Like I said, you need the punter, you need the kicker,
Yeah,
you need
you
the
need
right guard.
every single person. I mean, that's why I love filmmaking, is that we all get together and get to create this amazing thing together. It's our baby, it's our child. We all have
Right.
put in the effort, and we all have different tasks. And I love my actors so much, and their jobs are so hard. And I'm the first one to defend them and to be there for them and to be their top supporter, because we're in this together and we're creating this
Mhm.
character together. And they're so important to me, and so I'm very grateful to get to work so closely with them.
And I know that they feel the same way because, like I said, they're literally your creation that you've thought of. Is that, and that's amazing. It's like creating music.
Yeah,
This feeling comes from your heart, goes out through your fingers and your mouth, and it goes out for the world to see. And that's the same thing with you. This idea comes from your brain out to your fingers, and then you dress it up and you make it. And that's so fucking cool. Like no one can ever take that away from you. That's so rad. So, um, I've had an amazing time talking about Jaws being your
yes.
first horror movie, but now my little buddy Ghostface is here, Whitney, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite
No.
scary movie, Whitney?
I know. I
Oh,
it's definitely Scream. Scream is my favorite horror movie of all time. I watch it pretty regularly, like once every 2 months or so. I put the entire all five movies on now.
yeah.
That's Scream will always be my top. I actually dressed up as Ghostface 3 years in a row in middle school for Halloween, and I would not take my costume off at like the middle school party, and I scared all of my friends. And like I'm here in these photos just with my plastic knife, terrifying all the other children.
That's so
so,
legit.
so
What a-
Ghostface and Scream is everything to me.
it's amazing because, and again, I know I sound like such an old man when I say this, but Scream revitalized and rejuvenated the horror genre. Whether you love or you hate Scream, you absolutely cannot deny the impact that it had, not only in the horror community, but in pop culture. Um, it alone created its own form of spin-offs in the scary
Mhm.
movie franchise. Without Scream, you would have never got those.
Mhm.
I firmly believe we wouldn't have gotten our I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, Valentine. These movies at The Faculty, Halloween
Mhm.
H2O wouldn't have existed without Scream.
Completely.
And to say, I know that there's a lot of people out there that aren't big fans of Scream. And I understand and I respect it. It's not for everybody. But it's like with me and Kiss. I'm not a huge Kiss fan. I've never been a fan of their music. But there are people that will dress their faces up in makeup just to go and stand outside for 72 hours to get their concert tickets.
Right.
There's no way you can't respect that. So,
Exactly. You have people who love it.
right. And even though it's not for me, I'm glad that there's a group of people, ICP, with their gigolos, or
Mhm.
they do their thing, and I respect it. It's, what, you've created this following, you've cultivated it, you've built it, and it's amazing. Even if it's not for me, that's incredible. And you have these people, and Scream is one of those movies that is a once in a lifetime lightning in a bottle type thing. The way that to
Completely.
me, Scream is when horror went from being underground punk rock to mainstream. Like that was their album that made it cool to like horror after Halloween, you know? Like we weren't nerds for watching Scream 2 in March. You know, people were like, that's
Exactly.
an
We're like,
October movie.
you're like, no, no, horror is year round. I mean, it resuscitated the slasher. It,
Yeah.
brought back, the combination of horror and comedy, and in this sort of meta kind of way. So
Yeah.
new, we all talk about how Scream has changed everything. And for me too, I make a lot of horror comedies. I did Happy Death Day to You and with Freaky, and I love blending genres. It's so much fun. And, you have these high highs with the comedy, and then you have the scares, and then you can really do so much in one film. And so Scream really showed the roadmap of what is possible.
Well, I mean, shit, you just talked about Happy Death Day to You. Holy shit. You want to talk about a genre bending film?
Yeah.
Like that. I will admit this openly to anybody that will listen, and anybody that knows me knows this is true because I just did a whole stream about it. I weep like a baby every time she sees her mom at that dinner table,
Yeah.
or when she's meeting her dad and her mom's standing right there. I sob every time. Or at the end when she's telling her, you're beautiful. I just needed to tell you. Like I lost my mother suddenly at the age of 50.
Oh.
She just didn't wake up. I didn't get to say goodbye. So like I put myself in that situation of Tree seeing her mom standing there, and it's just like it punches you in the stomach,
right.
And
You
guys
yeah.
and the time travel aspects, like there's so much about that movie that I think is just one of the better horror sequels we've gotten in the last 20 years. When it comes, obviously, if you're going into this looking for the same type of slasher with a supernatural feeling, you're probably gonna be a little dissatisfied. But if you go into this with an open mind and you're still looking for great acting, maybe better acting, and I'm not trying to be cynical about the first one, I love it, but I was seeing if I had my hat. I have a Happy Death Day hat. I thought it was
fantastic.
Right here.
Yeah, I love how much, we get to play with different emotions and feelings, and it was such a pleasure to get to do. Like I loved the first movie so much, and I saw it in the theater, and then my agent is like, hey, you want to interview to do the second one? And I was like, absolutely. And then I met Chris Landon, and within like 5 minutes, it's like, that's it. And, we've done 4 movies together now. I love Chris so much. He's so brilliant and so talented and just the best person around. And I will do anything for that man. And Jess too. Jess is now one of my dear friends. I love her so much, and getting to work with her and create this other side of Tree, this alternate reality Tree. I mean, we got to go to some really interesting places emotionally and tell the story through clothing. And I just am so proud I got to be a part of that, and to not only work with amazing people, but tell a really great story that has scares, that is an adventure, it's sci-fi. I mean, time loops and Groundhog's Day and any time loop thing. My family is obsessed with time travel and all of that. So we watched every time travel, everything growing up. So it was such a dream to get to do that in one of my movies.
I'm surprised your elbow is okay, because if I were you, I would have not have stopped patting myself on the back after landing that movie. Like that's so fucking cool, man.
I was so
happy.
Like, oh, thank you. It was a dream come true. And then getting to meet Chris, and now we've done 4 movies together. I mean, how great is that?
That's what I was just gonna say. And when you are, and again, I'm not trying to butter you up because you're here. I reached out to you for a reason, obviously, and that's because I love and respect the work that you do.
Thank you.
But when you are so good at what you do that these actors and directors want you to keep coming back, it shows you're doing something right. Because something I've learned in horror, it's scary and it's terrifying and it's bloody and it's all these things, but it is so much love between the people that are creating this, and you have the nicest, kindest, sweetest people you could ever want to be a part of your life, making these films and creating these films and coming up with the costume design and the score. And horror cons are one of my favorite things on the planet. And I've said this before, you don't get rom-com con. You don't have people taking 3 days to dress up like Ryan Gosling saying, you're a bird, I'm a bird. You don't get that. But you have these people that will go all out and buy merchandise of their favorite movies just so they can dress up like it and go, like, and it's amazing to me. And you've landed this gig not because of sympathy or because of the studio, but because of the great work you do. You get to work with these other amazing minds and create this amazing stuff. And I honestly cannot wait to see what you have coming up for us in the future. But before I let you go, Whitney, what we're going to do, and I think I know the answer, but my script right here says I got to ask. We're going to bounce back to Jaws.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we are going to rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're
Okay.
not ranking Jaws on acting, production, costume design. We're not ranking it on anything like that right now. What we're doing is strictly ranking Jaws on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective,
Mhm.
5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Whitney, what would your ranking of Jaws be?
I think definitely 5 skulls because like how it affected me in the pool, how it affects me
Yeah.
just in water in general. My love of film scores, my love of storytelling, my love of horror. I mean, it was such a foundational movie for me, like right below Scream, with the top 2 horror movies that really have changed my life in a big way, and made me so excited to learn more about other movies. So
Yeah.
definitely 5.
And we go back to the butterfly effect. Like, if you had not watched that movie, would we be sitting here doing this right now?
Right.
And
Everything is
it's
connected.
exactly. And I don't say this because this is my podcast or anything, but I genuinely don't remember the first comedy I watched. I don't remember the first action movie I watched. I don't even remember the first animated movie I watched. But I remember House 1986 like I was watching it yesterday. I
Wow.
remember
Yeah.
that movie
Yeah.
like it was like it's right in front of me, and I can see Roger Cobb right now. So that's why I love to tell these stories, because not only have I gotten to learn about the first horror movie you watched, but because I asked you, you got to dig back in those archives and think about your brother and the time that you had sitting there and looking out at the pool cleaner, like, come on, it's been clean for 3 days. Get that shit
Yeah,
out of the deep
get
end.
out.
I want to dive. Do a cannonball. So
My
like, and
parents pulled it out of the pool.
that's another reason why I'd love to do this, because I could talk about, this is episode number 398, guys. I've talked about Jaws a couple times, but I've never heard the stories that Whitney just told me. And that's why doing this is so special to me, because I get that question a lot. Like, how many times can you talk about Nightmare on Elm Street? 1,000.
Yeah.
And I can have 1,000 different stories about what it means to people and how it affected them in different ways. So I said this at the top, you guys, but it's my show, it's my rules. All of Whitney's links are down here in the description. So make sure you're following her. Make sure you're sending her a couple tweets, letting her know you appreciate the work she did, whether it was Freaky or Next of Kin or Happy Death Day to You. After you're done wiping your tears watching that movie, let her know how great she did on that film, and be ready for the things she has coming up, because now that you've gotten a little dig into her mind, maybe you'll appreciate a little more all the hard work that she does on these sets. So Whitney, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing as well. And until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.